This is day 5 of the Terminator Reboot. This is 30-day screenplay. I'm thinking a lot about, I just saw that Sin Help trailer, the Sam Raimi trailer dropped today. And I'm thinking a lot about the Eat the Rich feeling. I mean, it was very triangle of sadness. And, it's kind of like, when all of this goes away and we return to a more primal world, those people in positions of power that feel comfortable with that power will sort of have a rude awakening about how power actually works. And I think that fantasy, that power fantasy, is kind of part and parcel to what Hollywood does well. That's why the guy who has his daughter kidnapped has a special set of skills, and that's why the dad who's threatened on the bus gets to go home and, dig up the case in his basement that has all the weapons. He gets them. Like, I think that power fantasy is kind of a thing. And so I think that, as we look at who these two characters are, and as we look at how to kind of build a contained space thriller between two people that's fiery and explosive with mostly words and a lack of, big CGI and visual effects, I think it's an Eat the Rich movie. I think 100% it's an Eat the Rich movie. I think it's class warfare. We talked a lot about, having something that can go viral by itself, something that the internet can help to fuel, that the algorithm is trained on, that the idea of the piece is to capitalize on the momentum and culture. And I don't think 14 months from now, when this thing is written and financed and shot and cut and edited and coming out, I don't think it isn't in the news anymore that the billionaire, by that point possibly trillionaire class is maintaining a large amount of power. And like, people say, oh, well, you're dead already because those are the people that run the studios and certainly the tech companies that would put this movie out. And it's like, yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe, maybe that's how this goes, or maybe this goes another way. But I think 100% he's a billionaire. I think that if we're going to make him a billionaire, let's make him the worst billionaire ever. Like, someone who works with total impunity, somebody who thinks that their power is above the law, someone who's got fingers in every single part of the pie. Like, he should have finance connections. He should have political connections. He should have entertainment connections. He should be heavily involved in tech. Like, if you're going to create sort of your worst nightmare, billionaire supervillain and put him in this, in this movie, you want to kind of put a label on what we're all feeling, that anxiety, that general sense of dread about what's happening in the world. And you want to kind of give that to a single person so that the audience can know, like, oh, well, that's clearly, obviously the bad guy because he thinks he's above the law. And I learned this from Shane Black. Shane Black just made a movie, Play Dirty, on Amazon. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic. It's got Ocean's 11 vibes. It's kind of a fun heist thriller, but it's a Parker movie, so it's hard R. And Shane Black doing rated R movies, like, I'm in for that all day. But one thing that I think that was a really, really great, his pacing is great, his dialogue is great, his characterization is great, his storytelling is all rock solid. But the one thing that I think was the big takeaway was, Shane Black has a special gift for higher power authority. And if you don't know higher power authority, it's the idea that it's a sales term. You walk into a car dealership and the car salesman says, hey, if I can find the car you want with the color you want for the price you want, is there any reason you can't buy today? And if you say, well, yeah, I mean, if it's the right car at the right price, then yeah, you've already bought that car. Like, you bought that car. Like, that's a done deal. So what the salesman does is he's qualifying you to make sure that if he puts in his time and effort, that he can close the sale and make the deal. The minute you say, well, my wife really has the final say, or we make our decisions together, he's like, go home and get your wife. Because he doesn't want to put the time and effort in knowing that you can't do it. Well, if you say, my uncle gives us the down payment, then he's like, can you get your uncle? Can you bring your uncle in? Because what he wants to do is he wants to get everybody in the room that could possibly say no and not have anyone say, this deal isn't going to happen even though we put all this time and effort into it. So it's higher power. It's like, I would love to do that for you, but my boss, unfortunately, he does the same thing to you when he comes back and says, I have to talk to my manager. There's no manager to talk to. He's going in the back to get a coffee, and then he comes back and sits down and talks to you. So the higher power authority is often, sort of articulated. And Shane Black did it like 3 or 4 times in this movie. He did an exceptional job of saying, okay, you can create a villain, and that villain can seem almost unbeatable in every single way, but the smart money figures out how there's always a bigger fish in the sea. There's always a kind of sort of a higher power above that. And he did it in the flashback story when he figured out how to keep, somebody from stealing his friend's bike. And he did it with the with the mob villain that runs the town with an iron fist. There was a bigger fish for him. He did it with the billionaire who, found, FAFO'd and sort of found the bigger fish for him. So I don't want to spoiler alert, but of the 3 or 4 villains in the movie, and there are several, he found sort of the bigger fish in each case so that that person kind of had something to answer to. And I think that's a big part of what we're going to do here too. I saw that and I was just like, oh, that's exactly what we have to do as well. Because, if you have a Terminator in a movie and that Terminator is an unstoppable force and it's completely, totally, relentless, you run the risk of, well, then no one can defeat it ever. And I think that's one thing that Cameron did really, really well in the first movie is he made the Terminator an unstoppable force and no one didn't agree. He took out entire police, station full of cops, but did have the ability to be stopped. And so I think that for that and the sort of human villain in the piece, you kind of want to be able to play with something that is the bigger fish, that isn't just a tacked on ending or like an easy solution because you needed kind of conflict or resolution in this place, but like build it into the DNA. And I think a lot about Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So this is a micro-budget Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This is 2 people in a house who are in the fight for their life. And it's figurative, and it's psychological, and it's physical, and it's emotional, and it's like it's sort of back and forth chess match. And I reached out to Ken Berg, and he actually gave me some really great advice. He said, make sure that your action is a device in the story which moves your plot forward. So in other words, the same way that you think your dialogue scenes are necessary to move the plot forward, your action has to actually be moving the story forward. And I actually found this great clip of him being interviewed like way back in the day about writing Electric Boogaloo. I think it was Mike. Oh God, it'll come to me. But he's interviewed about Electric Boogaloo, and they said, what did you try and do in the dances? What did you try and do with the dance? And he's like, I tried to further the story with the dance. I tried every dance to be like a plot furthering, story furthering, character developing. You can't take your plot of your movie, your characters, and then have that be one box, and then have your action be in another box, and have them not be linked or related at all. And I think Mr. and Mrs. Smith, especially the middle section in the house, is just an exceptional escalation of what is, a therapy movie. Two people locked in a dispute over the direction of their relationship. So that's really, really what we have to do here. We have to have our words dance in a violent dance. And I think, I was thinking a lot about the location to set this in, and you can always do the cliffside, romantic, beautiful billionaire escape, and you can always do the remote, gorgeous house in the middle of nowhere. And that's so done. What is fascinating is the way that Fincher did Panic Room. You guys remember Panic Room was a brownstone, so it was a walk up, so it was like cemented, slammed right between 2 other buildings, right in the middle of New York. Every window, every vent pipe, every chance to get out to the outside world, to let the outside world know that this is happening not in some distant location, but right there in the middle of the city, and a hustle and bustle with like 1 million, people on the streets and walking by. That sort of contained and isolated thing, I think, is such a fantastic idea, and something that you don't see enough. And so I'd like to lift, if I could, Mr. Fincher, that very generous framework for contained space horror thriller from the sort of Panic Room model. So it's Panic Room between 2 people who are sort of diametrically opposed to each other. And I shudder to label which one is the Terminator yet, because I think what you want to have is 2 human characters that look and feel and act and are human in every single way, and then maybe be surprised as to which one's the Terminator, or at least be suspecting which one you think is the Terminator. But both of these characters are basically like predators who have been so wounded and abused and traumatized that they have either gone inward or weaponized that trauma to be a weapon for the world. And you think about Kyle Reese and you think about that guy shows up, and if you haven't read it yet, go back to James Cameron's original treatment for it, because Kyle Reese came through the portal with another guy originally, and the other guy beamed, or sort of morphed. He basically was transported into the metal grating of a fence, and it went through like his organs and his heart, and he was like barely alive when they got there. And the guy was basically like, "Don't waste time with me, Reese. Like, you know what to do." And Kyle Reese chokes him out, like snuffs him out. Like Kyle Reese's first move, the first thing we see when we meet him, beyond the scraggling and the choking and the shivering and the blood and the scrapes from the transportation, the time displacement portal, the first thing we see him do as a hero is to murder his traveling companion, his fellow soldier. And obviously didn't make it into the movie, but it's like Cameron understands what the price of weaponized trauma is. And I don't think we can shy away from that. I think we need to run towards that. I think we need to bring that back to the human characters in the story. And I'm not saying other people haven't done it. Once again, this isn't about other things. This is about like a unique opportunity to take a rated R action, genre film and boil it down to sort of its horror roots, and see if you can create something that is, in essence, a very, very, very visceral, like emotional human experience without the money that you would normally spend on CGI or big budget, physical effects, and kind of, keep the tension of that, keep the fear of that, keep the terror of that, keep all the roller coaster sort of feelings of that, but put it in a really small, sort of package. So that's where I'm at day 5. I'm going to start the treatment today. I'm going to write it in the same style that James Cameron wrote his original 46-page Terminator treatment, which is basically like this staccato, punchy, brief, short. Your eyes should be able to trip down the page. You should be able to have the experience. The treatment is not going to have every single thing in it. It's going to be like a kind of especially at this stage, it's going to be kind of Cameron calls them scriptments. He's written several, and they're all very entertaining to read, especially when you've seen the movie and you can kind of paint with the strokes that he has. But he had it. It was on the page. It was right there on the page in the treatment. Like, that's the movie. So that's the next step. I'll be starting that today, day 5, but I'm also a little reluctant to commit to too many things right now. So there's going to be a bunch of placeholders. There's going to be a bunch of question marks. There's going to be a bunch of things that are like, how do we do this? Like, character introductions are a big deal to me. So when you have a character introduction, you want to make sure that you do it the coolest way possible. So like, you think about how Spielberg, introduced Schindler, and how, he did that really, really sweeping Steadicam shot, across the room with the sort of dollar bills, so that you saw Schindler and you saw Schindler's world and you saw his domain and you saw his kind of, the empire in which he crafts his brilliance long before you saw the man. So a stage was set and then the man was introduced. And it's like, you want to kind of really put some thought into that. You want to think about that. You want to think about how you can do something clever and crafty and creative. And it doesn't have to be on day 5 of 30-day screenplay, but it's a goal that you're giving yourself and you're trying to think about it. So like, how do you sort of proselytize? How do you dramatize? How do you turn this into a WWE entrance? How do you do the televangelist sort of smoke and fog and mirrors? Like, you're not going to do, that's not exactly what you're going to do, but you're going to try to find some way to like sort of make your characters' entrances onto this stage, which is ultimately just people talking in a house. Remember, any special effect you can use at any time, any way that you can use the camera, the setting, to make it a more interesting, more engaging, more dynamic thing. You have to, because you don't have any money. So you have 2 people talking in a room. What you need to do is you need as many magic tricks as you can. So if you guys got any, put them in the comments, because I need everything I can get. But I'm going to start that today. By tomorrow, I'm going to start to I don't have who these people are yet. I don't have them as characters. And I think that's a big thing. Like, you guys need to know you won't always have it. Just jump in, just start going, just start feeling it out. You hear something and you think like, oh yeah, that's who that character is. That's exactly right. Put that in. And you hear something else, and you're like, well, that doesn't ring true at all. Like, just delete or just leave it, and then ask yourself why that's rubbing you wrong. And then, is it because it's not the character, or because it is the character, but it's not ready to be revealed to the audience just yet? So you feel uneasy about the place in which you've shared that information. So listen, it's getting exciting. It's day 5. We're going to start that treatment. We power through for the next 4 or 5 days. We keep breaking story points. We know we got a supervillain billionaire. We know that he thinks he's above the law. We're going to paint him as the worst billionaire of all the billionaires. We're going to put all the bad billionaire juice into him so that we can kind of create a character that the audience automatically knows is the bad guy, which I think, by the way, might be used by a clever writer as a diversion. I'm not talking about an audience, what they call that, expectation. What's it called? Messing up the audience's expectations or whatever. Like, I forget what that term is, but everyone loves to throw it around in meetings. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you are being sold this hard at the opening of the movie that this guy is that guy, it might be a big giant twist later to find out he's not that guy. But like, I don't want to ruin too much because I'm thinking in my mind through, like, how do you take the audience on a roller coaster and get them to believe that they absolutely positively know something early in the movie, and then as information is revealed, they realize the thing that they know is not the thing that they think they have at all, and it's like they completely have to look at it from a new angle. And then once they're settled in on that and they've accepted that as fact, and they know that that's, okay, now we know that that's a base reality and we're all going to agree that that is the thing, then you have a chance to kind of flip it again. If you're clever, if you're smart. Now, if you start yo-yoing your audience, then they tap out and they get pissed off and they go to the internet and they're just like, don't see this movie. Like, this is a lesson in infuriating stuff. But turns, character turns, plot turns, the dynamics that come out of, sort of finding and establishing a reality and then kind of messing with the audience's understanding of that reality and ultimately forcing them to question why they believed so heavily in that reality. To me, that's a lot of what the playground that is two people locked in a room gives you the chance to do, because those are your special effects, like those story points, those thinking points, like those things. Like, the menu was an Eat the Rich movie that was in one location or relatively small number of locations with like a limited cast of characters. And it was a brilliant, brilliant dissection of that. I think that the bar is very, very high for these movies. And once again, I personally don't know if I have the talent or ability to do it, but that's not going to stop me. Like, that hasn't stopped me yet. So day 5, enjoy. Let's make some Terminator.